You're not fighting about money. You're never fighting about money. You're fighting about the dishes, about the tone of voice, about who forgot to call back, about something that happened 3 weeks ago that neither of you fully remembers anymore. But underneath every fight, underneath every cold silence, underneath every moment where you look at the person across the room and feel something that is not love and not hate, but something exhausting in between. There is a number. Sometimes it is the balance on a credit card. Sometimes it is the gap between what comes in and what goes out. Sometimes it is a savings account that never grows no matter how careful you try to be. Sometimes it is just the feeling, formless, constant, low, that you are behind, that you will always be behind. That no matter what you do, the math never tips in your favor. That feeling does not stay in your finances. It moves into your body, into your sleep, into the way you speak to the people you love most, into the distance that grows between two people who started with everything and somehow ended up here. This is not a story about money. This is a story about what money does to people when it runs out, and what it does to the people who love them. Chapter 1. The Science Nobody Teaches You. You're 27. You and your partner have been together for 3 years. You moved in together 8 months ago. You love each other. You're certain of this. You're also $2,400 short this month. Not by a catastrophic amount. Not by a number that requires a phone call to parents or a conversation with a bank manager. Just short enough that the last week of every month feels like walking a tightrope. You do not talk about it. Not because you're hiding it, because talking about it makes it more real, because the conversation has not gone well the last 2 times you tried, because it is easier to not start something you do not know how to finish. What you do not know yet is what is happening inside your body while you avoid the conversation. Financial stress triggers the same neurological response as physical danger. Your hypothalamus, the part of your brain that manages threat responses, cannot distinguish between a predator and a credit card bill. Both activate the same system. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your heart rate elevates. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for empathy, patience, and rational decision-making, goes partially offline. You are not just stressed about money. You are in a low-grade physiological threat response that does not turn off because the threat does not go away. The dishes are not the problem. The dishes are just the moment the threat response found an exit. Research from the American Psychological Association consistently shows that money is the #1 source of stress for Americans. More than work, more than health, more than family. And stress, chronic, unrelenting, low-grade stress, is the single most corrosive force in human relationships. Not because stressed people are bad people, because stressed people are running on a depleted system. And a depleted system has no reserves for patience, for generosity, for the 10,000 small acts of grace that hold a relationship together over time. Chapter 2. The Silence That Costs More Than the Debt. You're 29. The $2,400 shortfall became a pattern. Some months better, some months worse. The average is a slow drift in the wrong direction. You have developed a system, not consciously, not deliberately, but a system nonetheless. You do not open financial conversations after 9 p.m. You do not bring up money on Sundays because it ruins the day. You do not mention the credit card statement that arrived Tuesday because Thursday is already hard enough. Your partner has their own system. They do not ask about the account balance directly anymore. They stopped after the 3rd time the question landed wrong. They watch the small signals instead. Whether you ordered the cheaper thing at the restaurant, whether you hesitated before saying yes to the weekend trip, whether you checked your phone under the table when the bill arrived. You are both fluent in a language you never agreed to speak. The silence feels like protection. It is not protection. Research from the Journal of Family and Economic Issues found that financial disagreements are the strongest predictor of divorce. Stronger than disagreements about children, stronger than infidelity, stronger than differences in values. But it is not the disagreements themselves that cause the damage. It is the avoidance of the disagreements. Couples who fight about money and resolve it fare significantly better than couples who develop elaborate systems to never have the fight at all. The avoidance creates a topic that grows in the dark, a subject that becomes so loaded with history and failed attempts and accumulated resentment that eventually it cannot be discussed without detonating something. The $2,400 shortfall is not the problem. The system you built to never talk about it is the problem. And the system costs more over time than the debt ever did. Chapter 3. The Invisible Scoreboard. You're 31. You got a raise. Not a dramatic one, but enough to breathe slightly easier most months. Your partner did not get a raise this year. Their industry is contracting. The conversations about it have been brief and careful. You both know the topic is sensitive. You both navigate around it with the precision of people who have learned where the edges are. What neither of you has said out loud is what is actually happening. A scoreboard appeared in your relationship. Neither of you drew it. Neither of you agreed to it. But it is there. You earn more now, which means you pay more now, which means when a financial decision goes wrong, it lands on you differently than it lands on your partner. Which means when your partner spends on something you consider unnecessary, you feel something that is not quite anger, but is adjacent to it. Something you would be embarrassed to name. Your partner feels the scoreboard too. From the other side, the side where every purchase requires a quiet internal calculation, where asking for something feels like a transaction, where independence, something they had before you, feels like it has been quietly renegotiated without anyone signing anything. Income imbalances are one of the most common and least discussed sources of relationship stress. A study from Washington University found that when one partner earns significantly more than the other, both partners report lower relationship satisfaction, even when the higher earner is not openly resentful, and even when the lower earner is not openly ashamed. The scoreboard does not need to be spoken to be felt. It lives in the pause before a purchase. In the particular way, one person says, "fine," when they do not mean fine. In the small withdrawals of intimacy that happen so gradually that neither person can point to when they started. Money changed the power structure of your relationship without asking permission. And power, even invisible, unspoken, unintended power, changes everything. Chapter 4. The moment it becomes a crisis. You're 33. Something happens. It always does. Maybe the car breaks down and the repair is $3,200. Maybe one of you loses a job. Maybe a medical bill arrives for something you thought was covered. Maybe it is smaller than that. A holiday that went over budget. A family obligation that cost more than expected. A subscription you both forgot about that triggered an overdraft. The size of the event does not matter as much as what was already there when it arrived. If a relationship has reserves, financial reserves, and emotional reserves, a crisis is a problem. Solvable, stressful, but finite. If a relationship has been operating on empty for years, financially and emotionally depleted by the accumulated weight of unspoken stress, a crisis is not a problem. A crisis is a detonator. The fight that follows is not about the car. You both know this somewhere beneath the words. But the car is where it starts, and the car is not where it ends. Things get said. Not because you mean them entirely, because you have been carrying them for 2 years, and the car was the moment the weight became unbearable. Your partner says you never talk about money until it is too late. You say they spend without thinking. They say you control everything. You say you have to because someone has to. Neither of you is entirely wrong. Neither of you is entirely right. The real conversation, The one about the years of silence and the invisible scoreboard and the cortisol and the system you both built to never have to feel this. That conversation does not happen. It rarely does. In the middle of a crisis, the brain is not capable of it. The prefrontal cortex is still offline. The threat response is still running, so you fight about the car. And the car stands in for everything. And something breaks that is harder to fix than a car. Chapter 5. The statistics behind the story. You step back for a moment. You look at the numbers not as your story, but as a pattern. The pattern is everywhere. A study from Utah State University followed 1,000 couples over time and found that couples who argued about money once a week were 30% more likely to divorce than couples who argued about money less frequently. Fidelity's 2023. Couples and Money Study found that 43% of couples do not know how much their partner earns. Not because they never asked, because money became a topic they stopped approaching directly. A survey by Ramsey Solutions found that money fights are the second leading cause of divorce behind infidelity, and in longer marriages, the leading cause. The American Institute of CPAs found that 73% of couples cited financial stress as a significant source of tension in their relationship. The numbers are not surprising once you understand the mechanism. Financial stress is chronic. Unlike a single argument or a single crisis, money stress does not resolve. It returns every month, with every bill, with every paycheck that does not quite cover everything, with every conversation avoided and every purchase second-guessed. Chronic stress does not just affect mood, it affects personality. The research on chronic stress shows measurable changes in patience, empathy, generosity, and emotional availability, the exact qualities that make a long-term relationship survivable. You're not fighting because you are incompatible. You're fighting because you are both running a system that was never designed to handle the weight you put on it. The relationship is not broken. The financial foundation under it is. Chapter 6. What money arguments are actually. About you are 35. You have been in therapy for 4 months. Not couples therapy yet. Your own therapy. Because somewhere in the wreckage of the car fight, something cracked open and you decided you were tired enough to try something different. Your therapist asks you to describe the last money argument. You describe the car, the repair bill, the fight that followed. She asks you what you were actually afraid of. You start to say the money, then you stop. Because when you actually sit with the question, the answer is not the money. The answer is that the number in the account is tied to something older than the relationship. The answer is that you are afraid of being seen as someone who cannot provide. Something from your father's face when the bills came. Something from the apartment you grew up in. Something from a feeling you have carried so long you stopped noticing its weight. For your partner, the answer is different. They are afraid of being seen as a burden. Afraid of losing the independence they worked for. Afraid that love with financial strings attached is a different kind of love than the one they thought they signed up for. Money arguments are almost never about money. They are about security, about identity, about the stories we inherited from the families that shaped us before we were old enough to question them. A study from Kansas State University found that the way people argue about money is more damaging to relationships than the amount of money they argue about. Contempt, dismissiveness, stonewalling. These communication patterns, not the dollar amounts, are what predict relationship failure. You can be broke and deeply connected. You can be wealthy and profoundly alone. What determines the outcome is not the number. It is what the number means to each of you, and whether you ever loved each other enough to have that conversation. Chapter 7. The relationships that survive. You're 37. You know couples who have been through worse than you financially and came out intact. You have started to study them the way you study things that matter. What you notice is not that they do not fight about money. They do. What you notice is different. They have a shared language for it. Not a language they were born with. A language they built. Deliberately. Imperfectly. Over time, they have a money meeting, not a dramatic intervention, a regular conversation, monthly or weekly, where the numbers are on the table and neither person is the enemy of the numbers. The numbers are just information, neutral, shared. The problem to be solved together rather than the accusation to be survived alone. They have separate accounts and a joint account, not because they do not trust each other, because the separate accounts preserve a sense of individual agency that makes both people feel less like the financial decisions of the relationship are happening to them rather than with them. They have a number they are both working toward, not competing toward, working toward. A shared goal that makes the sacrifices feel like investments rather than punishments. They fight about money, but they fight about it the same week it comes up, not 3 weeks later when it has mixed with everything else and become something unrecognizable. None of this requires a large income. Some of the strongest financial partnerships you know are between people of modest means who built something together by simply agreeing to face the same direction. The money does not have to be abundant to stop being a weapon. It just has to be shared. Chapter 8. What you can actually do. You're 38. You are not a therapist. You are not a financial planner. You are someone who has been on both sides of a money fight and understands something now that you did not understand before. The first thing you can do is have the conversation before the crisis forces it. Not the argument. The conversation. The one where you both put the actual numbers on the table without blame and without shame. Just the numbers. What comes in? What goes out? What is owed? What is saved? The conversation that feels impossible until you have it once and realize that the reality, however uncomfortable, is less frightening than the thing your imagination built in the silence. The second thing you can do is build a money meeting into your relationship. A regular time, monthly, is enough, where finances are a standing agenda item rather than an emergency detonator. 15 minutes. The same night every month. The numbers reviewed together. The decisions made together. The stress distributed rather than carried alone by whoever is most anxious. The third thing you can do is separate the money conversation from the relationship conversation. They are not the same conversation. The budget is a practical document. What the budget means to each of you, what it triggers, what it represents, what old story it activates. That is a different conversation. Both matter, but mixing them produces heat without light. The fourth thing you can do is build an emergency fund together. Not a large one, not immediately, but the single most effective reducer of financial stress in a relationship is a buffer. A number in an account that means the next crisis is a problem rather than a detonator. $1,000 changes the math. $5,000 changes the relationship. The fifth thing you can do is find out what money means to your partner. Not what they spend it on. What it means to them, what it represents, what they are afraid of losing, and what they are working toward. This conversation, honest, unhurried, not in the middle of a fight, is the foundation that no budgeting app can replace. Money is not the enemy of love. Silence about money is the enemy of love. And silence, unlike debt, is free to fix. You're not fighting about money. You're never fighting about money. You're fighting about the dishes, about the tone of voice, about something that happened 3 weeks ago, but now you know what is underneath it. The number, the silence around the number, the system you both built to never have to feel the weight of the number at the same time. The relationship did not fail because of the money. The relationship failed because the money was never given a seat at the table. And things that are not given a seat at the table do not disappear. They just find another way in. Somewhere right now, two people who love each other are not talking about something important. They think they are protecting each other. They are not. The most generous thing you can do for someone you love is tell them the truth about where you are. Not where you wish you were. Not where you are pretending to be. Where you actually are. The conversation is hard. The silence is harder.